Ladies and gentlemen, and all genders outside and in between, welcome back to Thirsty Work, the all-new sex education podcast that delves into some interesting dynamics and questions, especially around hedonism. Tonight, my guest is the glorious OneTrueCripple. Ooh, that's Thirsty Work. Well, hello there, you spectacular specimens of humankind. It is I, Valen Vain, hosting this wonderful, now episode 8 of the Thirsty Work podcast, the all-new home of hedonism, the sex education podcast that we've been rolling out. And today I'm really excited. Because our guest today is a member of the community. Like, a lot of the other guests that we've had have been like content creators from different walks of life and what have you, but this specific guest, our wonderful friend OneTrueCripple, was a member of the community, and they were one of the people that approached me and was like, hey, you should definitely do an do a podcast on sex and disability and stuff like that. So without any further ado, I will bring in the glorious OneTrueCripple. How's it going, you beautiful individual?
Hey Valen, how's it going?
I'm very good, very good. How are you doing? All good?
I'm doing all right, enjoying the rest of my Sunday.
I am glad to hear it. I'm very...
And now I get to hang out with you guys.
Exactly, it's great, isn't it? It's great. Before we go into it, though, would you like to tell people who you are and what kind of thing you do, so that people that don't know you can get a little taster about what you're about, you know?
So, for those who don't know me, I am the one true cripple. Thou shalt not have cripples before me. I am a lifelong disabled person. I am in my mid-40s. I live in the United States. Single, bisexual, polyamorous guy. And I do my own thing. I write, I work, I drive everywhere. And I'm a huge gamer and nerd. So...
Yeah, which is amazing. You also, you've got an online website. Do you want to talk about that?
I do. I actually write for a website called popcultureuncovered.com. We do everything from movies to TV, music, podcasts, gaming, conventions, cosplay, you name it, we do it. A lot of stuff is focused on minority creators and minority creators, POC, disabled people, you know.
Which is great.
Underrepresented, we're there.
I mean, we were talking earlier about the fact that, like, there's a lot of things that you don't realize, that you don't see until it's put in your face, basically, which is, I suppose, this is what this is all about. Where it's been put in my face that I need to learn more about people with physical disabilities and what's going on there, and I am now doing that to all of our wonderful viewers and listeners, because I think it's great. I think it's wonderful that there's scenarios like this where we can just delve in and explore realms that we might not even considered beforehand, you know?
Indeed.
So, in regards to, like, do you want to tell everyone about your personal disability in regards to what you have, and then we'll delve into the rest of the million questions that I have, you know?
So, my main disability, I have what's called a neural tube defect called spina bifida. It is the most common permanently disabling neural tube defect in the world. Happens in about 1 in every 7,000 births. And it affects things like tissue growth, sensation, muscle function, nerve function. And mine is typically affected from about the middle of my thighs down. So I use a wheelchair full time.
Okay. And you were, like I said before, you were the person that genuinely approached me when I was first debating ever doing a podcast. And I was like, hey, anyone, you got any topics of conversation you would genuinely like to see me explore? And you were like, yes, I have this. This needs to be talked about. I would love this. And then you very kindly offered to be the guest as well, which I was just like, yeah, I mean, let's get on board that. It took me a while to get back to you about it, but we got there in the end, you know? We got there in the end. All right. Because it's
not like you don't know how to reach me.
It's very true. But this is like the ongoing, and I think one of the big things that is kind of like ingrained into society or into our brains is the idea that disabled people are not sexual beings.
So it's a long-running stigma that disabled people are completely asexual. And one of the things that got me started on kind of trying to counter that was I saw an amazing, amazing Spanish language documentary years and years ago. I don't know if I can curse on here, but it's called Yes
Yes.
We Fuck.
I'm all
Yeah,
about cursing. You know what I'm like.
the documentary is called Yes We Fuck. It is, as far as I know, only found online and only in Spanish language. But if you can find it and get someone to translate it for you, if you don't speak Spanish, it's absolutely brilliant and always recommend a watch.
Okay, yes, we fuck. I love that. I love that because this is the thing. Is it literally comes down to the fact that people don't consider it. And I remember watching Jesus. I don't even remember what it was called now. It was some sex education show like 15 years ago, and there was a couple on there who were talking about their sex life and the fact that there are certain things that I know that the gent couldn't feel anything from the waist down, but they were like, there are medical aids that we can get around this. And he was like, I find, yes, I don't have any sensation from the waist down, but that sensation has been diverted to other parts of my body, which I thought was really exciting.
And there is actually a term for that.
Oh,
It's
really?
known in men. It's known as a surrogate penis.
Okay. Okay.
It's for some reason because the human nervous system is strange, to say the least. So if a person becomes disabled or is born disabled, where they have that lack of sensation or function, the brain will like divert the pleasure centers to other parts of their body. For example, I know of an old associate of mine whose brain diverted it to his thumb.
With thumb.
His thumb.
Got a very sensitive thumb.
Indeed. So his well, that at that time girlfriend, I think they're subsequently married, but she would be talking to his, or talking to him and stroking his thumb, and that would help him. That would do a lot for him.
I love that because I've definitely become more and more aware of the fact that the more I dig into like sex education and bits and pieces, the more that I come across things like the nipple-gasm, the fact that somebody can have a full orgasm through the nipple. And then somebody was telling me about skin-gasms and like foot-gasms and the fact that there are, because of the way that these people's brains are set up with and the way their nervous system works and what have you, they can get extremely sensitive levels of pleasure through different parts of the body, which I mean, I just got excited. I might have squealed a little bit. I was like, oh my God, so many new realms of pleasure to explore,
Indeed.
So you were born with your disability, and
Yes.
that
Yes.
obviously there's going to be differences there with people that are born with it, and then obviously people that get it later on in life, whether it be through a disease or an accident or what have you.
Right.
And you were telling me about your education in regards to how you how your schooling system worked.
Yes. So when I was in high school, I was in a school where it was kind of built around a physical disabilities center or pod, if you will, and they would take the majority of the disabled students around the county and bring them to that school. So we had the various levels of different support that one could get, be that physical therapy, extra counseling, extra assistance, that sort of thing. But at that point, we got together, a few of the other seniors and myself, and we would go around to different classes, didn't matter what the subject matter was, and we would talk about our disabilities for a day. We'd make appearances at various classes throughout the day, and do like a Q&A thing, little panel discussion and a Q&A.
I love that. And I suppose that's really helpful in the regards that you are surrounded by people that are your peers on more than one level, in the fact that they get what it must be like to live and work and grow up with a variety of different disabilities, because it's one of those things that as someone without any disabilities, like, I will always be able to empathize, but I will never be able to understand. And I know that one of the big things that's really come through, especially with my time on being a streamer and being a content creator, is the realization and the more emphasis around the idea that it's not somebody's disability that makes them disabled. It's society.
So there are actually two models of disability. One is the
Okay.
societal model, which is the one that you've kind of mentioned. It's where we view the world as, it's the obstructions to accessibility that make a person disabled.
Yeah. So not
And
putting in a
that's
ramp.
always been the one that I follow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's the other one, out of interest?
I don't remember what the other one is called off the top of my head because I've spent so much time in the societal model.
Which is fair, and that's okay. I am gonna take a quick interjection because I completely forgot at the beginning of my big introduction. People that are watching this live on Twitch, you can actually use your channel points to request to ask questions, which we will all answer at the end of the show. The last 5-10 minutes of the show, I'll pick a whole load of the questions. So if you do have any questions, by all means, throw them out. Okay. So in regards to like your growing up and education, you said you were in this pod of people with physical disabilities that had that support network of not only your peers but any physiotherapy or counseling or therapy and stuff that you needed that was there for you. Mm-hmm. With that in mind, what was sex ed like in that dynamic?
So this is back, in the early to mid 90s, and there's zero mention of disabilities when it comes to like public school sex ed. None.
I mean, there's barely any mention of anything when it comes to public school sex ed.
That is quite fair. But I actually didn't learn a lot about the tools and things available to us until I was probably in my early 20s.
Okay. And was that through like self-exploration, or was it something you were quite open with friends and stuff?
It was a lot of self-exploration and talking with counselors, therapists, my own doctors, whom I've had a team of my entire life, just due to the various things that can go on with a person with my disability.
Yeah.
So.
And that's really interesting though. Like, and okay, so from that perspective, were there ever points where you felt, again, like that whole societal model of disability being how society makes things less accessible for you? Was there a similar sort of thing in regards to the sex side of things and the education around that, but also the way that you were perceived?
So, I mean, always, that's just going to be a thing where people who don't know that, people with disabilities, disabled folks are sexual beings, it's, in my experience, will almost automatically kind of default to they are asexual. We are, asexual. We don't have sex. It's ridiculous. So it kind of, this sounds really strange, but it kind of I took on more of the responsibility of initiating things like flirting.
Yeah.
And then that kind of leads into questions and discussion, as long as the person is open-minded.
And did you
I've
find
had
that
a lot of discussions about it, and it's great.
Did you find that there was, like, with the understanding that society has this preconception of disabled people being completely asexual, and for the people that might be new to the term, asexuality is a spectrum in itself, but it's to do with not having a specific sex drive. Like you've got like your demisexuality, where it's to do with emotional connection with people. Some people are fully sexually repulsed. Some people enjoy sex, but they don't have the lust when they see somebody specifically. They're just like, they don't have that, but they still enjoy sex themselves. There's an entire spectrum on that, and we've done another episode on that, which was great. But have you discovered, like, that when you've flirted with people, when you've initiated the conversation and the potential of getting to that cheeky bedroom antics time, that people have been surprised, shocked, like that, or was it always just like, no, you go.
I don't know that any of my partners or potential partners have been surprised or shocked. However, I did have a very funny moment several years into my former marriage.
Okay.
My ex-wife and I were hanging out at her grandparents' house, and someone pulled my grandmother-in-law aside and was like, they've been married for a while. Yes. Do they have sex? And my ex-grandmother-in-law, being the very blunt Southern black woman that she was, turned directly to the woman's face and says, "Well, I don't think she'd be with him if they weren't." And I lost it. I lost it. I nearly almost fell over laughing.
I love that. I love that. Like, just the bluntness of it. The come on now, this is a ridiculous question, because it is a ridiculous question when you think about it. Like, I mean, I've literally just said shocked and surprised, and I was thinking in my brain like, this is preposterous, but I'm asking it because a lot of people will question it. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
It
does happen, and I mean, then there's also a flip side to that, though, that ends up on another extreme, where people with disabilities get fetishized.
This is something I also want to talk about.
It's called devoteeism.
Oh, okay. Devoteeism.
Yeah. And I personally don't understand it, but, it's not my bag.
And it's in regards to the fact that people are just like, oh, well, I've never been with a disabled person before, so they get the lusts for it, like it's a notch on the bedpost type thing, or are we talking like full, I only want to get with disabled people?
I have actually met a couple of people throughout my life that are full-on fetishists for disabled people.
I love that. And I love that and obviously like consensual, everyone's involved on the same level. But I'm sure that there are definitely situations where that isn't the case. And I think the other thing that comes down to there, and it's something that has to be like brought up, especially in a conversation around sex and physical disabilities, is the extra level of prejudice and potential threat that goes with it. That it can't be any other way other than intimidating.
Well, there is actually that extra level of threat. Yes, in fact, a good percentage of SA survivors are disabled folks, both men and women,
and non-binary individuals as well, being as encompassing as possible. But it's got to be said, it's got to be brought up, it's got to be talked about. The fact that there are definitely people that will, predatory people will be predators regardless of who it is and what have you. But in regards to the actual like statistics and stuff, it's something that needs to be looked into. And I think it's also something that often doesn't get looked into because of the fact that people don't see disabled people as sexual, as you talked about earlier. They were like, oh, well, no one would ever do that, because why would they have sex with somebody who's disabled? God, heaven forfend that, disabled people actually enjoy things. Good God,
I know. How dare we enjoy our lives?
I love that. But it's a thing. Yeah, like, I'm gonna steer away from that a little bit, but I think it was definitely a point that needed to be brought up. So in regards to like people not seeing, okay, hold on, let's talk about your ex-wife. How did you and your ex-wife meet?
So officially we met at a club. That's not entirely accurate. We actually met in the backseat of a friend's car on the way to an after club party.
Okay, all right, I see.
So, and then, we spent a couple other weekends at the clubs just kind of hanging out, talking, and one night she drove me home and crashed at my place, and the rest was history.
I love that.
And we were together for, I think, a total of like 15 and a half years, married for 7.
That's great. That's fantastic. But did you find that being with somebody, especially for such a long period of time, there were awkward questions around you two?
So yes, but not for the reasons that you might think. My ex-wife worked in the medical field, so she was constantly in scrubs
Okay.
during the day. And I was at work one day, and she came to pick me up because my car was in the shop. And one of my coworkers comes to me and says, "Doug, your nurse is here to pick you up." It's not my nurse.
Oh
It's my
my
wife.
god. Oh my god. No.
Yep.
No.
Yep. And it happened more than once too, at different areas.
Well,
But
this is the thing. Like there's definitely, and I've seen it, and I've challenged it, especially now that I'm more aware of it. Where you'll see a couple, and somebody will be in a wheelchair, and the other person's pushing them around. They're having a good chat. They're having a laugh. They're obviously having a good time together, regardless of what their relationship dynamic might be. And people are like, "Oh, isn't it great that they've got carers?" I'm like, why are you automatically assuming that that person is their carer? Like,
right.
they could just be friends. They could be lovers. They could be like, it could be a carer. It's entirely true. But at the end of the day, that's not where your mind should automatically jump.
And that is the one of the cruxes of the perception of people with disabilities is a lot of times we are either infantilized or we're completely ignored when it comes to things like that.
And yeah, and it's not explored. It's not something
It's
that
not.
is explored. Have you found, in regards to like some of the more intimate questions, have you found any problems in regards to your disability that you have come up with? I suppose this is the other thing that we've got to remember when it comes to people with disabilities like yourself who have had it since like birth, pretty much. There's always going to be that scenario where like you don't know any different, so it's not something that crops up, I suppose, you know.
I mean, there's always, well, I don't want to say always. Most of the time, there is a level of awkwardness when it comes to those conversations.
Yeah,
You know, I have to hope that, the things that I say aren't going to push somebody away. And I would think that, if they ask me something, I'm not going to get offended.
yeah.
If you ask me something in good conscience and in good faith, I'm not going to get offended. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to offend me.
But is that a thick skin that's grown up because of the fact, because
Yes.
of the upbringing that you've had? Yeah.
Yes. So I mean, we all know that kids are cruel.
Yes.
So growing up as, the crippled kid, I got picked on. I was bullied mercilessly as a kid. And then both verbally and physically. And then over time, you just have to develop a thicker skin. And I've learned to respond with snark and comedy, and it usually works.
Yeah. Right. Comedy is a fantastic way of dealing with a lot of things. I frequently do the same in regards to dealing with any kind of bullies or what have you. So it's then exploring on that. Is there scenarios? Is it a point where you do have to sit down and have conversations with somebody? I mean, this is something that should be normalized, full stop. Anyway, having healthy communication between people that are getting intimate with each other. What are the chances, dear Lord? But in regards to like your situation personally, is it a situation
Sure.
like, do you know what? Hey, before we go any further, there's a few things we should probably talk about.
Oh, sure. I mean, for example, I can't bend my knees past just under 90 degrees
Okay.
due to an excessive amount of surgery that I've had. So certain positions are completely off the table.
Yeah.
There are other things, I have a blown out shoulder from an old injury so, a lot of activity with one arm is kind of iffy sometimes.
Yeah.
There are times when my body just doesn't want to work the way I want it to work. And it seems almost random. So,
But the thing that needs to be said there is the fact that like a lot of people will be listening to this and being like, oh yeah, I can see that because you're a disabled person. But the fact of the matter is that happens to everybody. Like there's
well,
definitely
sure,
times.
yes.
Oh, for sure. There's definitely times when you're getting close and intimate with somebody and your body's just going, by the way, I'm not going to do what you think I want you to do. And do you know? And And it's so mad to see how people will just be like, oh yeah, well, this makes sense because this person is disabled. And it's like, well, actually, if you think about it a little bit broader, no, it isn't. Like, this is the same as everybody else. But
Indeed.
in your brain, you're matter-of-facting it out as, oh, well, they're disabled, so naturally this makes sense. And it's like, oh,
Right. It's a level of rationalization that doesn't need to take place.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Okay, so when you were growing up, and because as you said, like sex education's been pretty poor with our upbringings, you know. But also, like you say, there's never been any sex education around people with disabilities before, or not to my knowledge anyway. Did
Not even
you?
mine.
There you go. And did you find, like, what was it like getting to the point where you were having those conversations? Like the first people you were getting with, and you were like, okay, how the hell do I go about this? Like, this is a conversation.
Extraordinarily awkward.
Mm-hmm.
I think the first few times, the first few partners that I had, there wasn't a lot of conversation, and that was mostly my fault because I didn't initiate things. Rather, I always tried to make sure that I was 100% prepared for any eventuality.
Yeah.
And I used to hide things a lot as well.
Well, self-consciousness comes to the best of us, do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like being super self-conscious, and there's definitely points where you're like, I don't want to say anything because I don't want them to look at me in a certain way.
Right. And so, I mean, I think it actually took until, God, probably till I met my ex-wife before I became completely comfortable with, addressing these things with partners.
And did that just get easier? Like, with you having like a long-term relationship with your ex-wife, was there points where you just like knew each other and you didn't have to?
Oh, sure.
There was no points to that, and you're just like, do you know what? This is what works. This is what's great. This is fantastic. We love this stuff, you know?
Oh, sure. But I mean, throughout our relationship, there was various levels of exploration.
And that's what every healthy relationship should have various levels. In my personal opinion.
I so agree with that. Yes.
Exploration is the greatest.
Yes, there as a basis though, we knew each other after a time.
Which is great because the other thing is that it's that emotional connection of just being like, I'm with somebody that I completely trust, and things will fuck up and things will go wrong, and they always do, regardless of how well you prepare for things. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I know full well that I can think, I'm like, I'm an atmosphere person. I have made all of these, put the candles on, the romantic music in the background. Oh shit, I've got cramp. Do you know what I mean? Like there's no way around that.
There's
shit
always
happens.
going to be something that could crop up. Yes.
Oh, every time, every single time. Has there ever been like a hilarious situation that you've been in where you're just like, oh my fucking god, like this?
Yes.
Is gonna be, yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
So I mentioned the blown out shoulder and my weakened back, because I sit constantly. My lower back is, a bit weak after 16 hours of doing things.
Yeah.
And then one night, again, when I was married, my ex-wife and I started getting romantic, and, things started happening in the bedroom, and it's going on, and I dropped her off the side of the bed. Like my entire back just went, nope. And I dropped her.
Oh no.
Thankfully, it was on a carpeted floor and, this relatively plush carpet. And so we had a good laugh about it after making sure that each other was okay physically.
Yeah.
Nothing was broken. And okay. Are you okay? I'm okay. We're good. We just fell out laughing for the next 20 minutes.
Of course. What else do you do? Like in that scenario, that's amazing. That is just like, oh shit. Well, what do we do but laugh? It's hilarious when you think about it. Oh, I love that. I love situations like that, and this is definitely something that a lot of people don't explore in regards to like sexuality and stuff. Is just the ability to let go of any kind of seriousness. It can be the most beautiful, the most intimate, the most heartfelt moment, but at the end of the day, it's like sex is always a little bit ridiculous. Like always a little bit ridiculous, you know?
Yeah. It's messy. We make weird faces, make weird sounds. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's going to be amusing
It's
on
hilarious.
some level.
Fucking love it. Absolutely fucking love it. Have you found, like, in regards to your own, as you said, you did a lot of exploration, as it were.
Indeed.
Were there specific things that you found that you were just like, oh my god, we need to try this? We need to, like, whether it be sex swings or certain toys or things that, like, were a little bit outside of what you initially perceive as, yeah, there we go, like, acceptable. I say acceptable, you know.
So, I mean, I hate using this term, but, going into things, growing up as, a teenage man,
Yeah.
I was vanilla. I hate using that term, but I was.
Yeah.
But,
I mean,
as I got older and I started branching out my friend circles, and then when I was married, we moved into things like, BDSM.
mm-hmm.
And that's during my marriage was also about the time that I realized that I'm kind of like wired poly, if that makes any sense.
In what way?
I feel like I'm wired to be poly.
Okay, yeah. As
know,
in, like, yeah, it just, like, it is your natural state of being is polyamory.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then, let's see, I discovered my bisexuality in high school. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of it is just, again, it's trial and error, especially for those times when your body goes, nope.
And bodies do. Bodies are
Yes.
fucking weird. Like,
Yes.
at the best of times, they're just fucking weird. Okay, in regards to that then, I'm going to pull straight onto the fucking BDSM side of things. Because naturally I have to. This is where my
Says
brain
you,
goes.
Valen.
Yeah, it is. It is me. Did you, like, go to, like, events and stuff? Or was it very much like a bedroom type
Yes.
thing?
In fact, I have an old friend of mine kind of runs or helps run one of the events near me.
All right,
And
okay.
he got me invited there once or twice. And my ex-wife was a musician, so we played at another friend's club who actually was an anthropologist, and he started the club as his thesis.
Okay.
And it was a bondage club, and it was fantastic. He just kept it going.
I love that. I love that. Well, I need a group of people to study. I know. I'll make a club. Let's go for it.
Right?
Let's do it. That's amazing. That's absolutely hilarious. Did you ever get, like, okay, so in regard, I don't know how open you were with like the BDSM side of things, and to me you seem like a very, very open person, but I also understand that open people have not always been open. There was definitely all of us at some point.
Oh no,
you've always been just a really open person.
Yeah. Well, there was a time up until I would say probably about my mid-20s where I was very quiet about it. Very quiet about it. And only like my closest partners knew, my closest friends.
Okay.
So,
was there ever a situation where assumptions were made because of the fact you were disabled within, like, the BDSM context? Because I think there is always, and the angle I'm going for here to make it clear is the fact that I am very, very aware that there is a preconception with a lot of people with disabilities that they can be taken advantage of, or they can be they're more vulnerable in some way, shapes, and forms. And in some ways, shapes, and forms, there are vulnerabilities there. But at the end of the day, like, it's not like you say, it's not like you can't make your own decisions. It's not like you can't make your own choices. You're still a fucking human being that is perfectly capable of doing everything everyone else does on that level. Do you know? But
pretty much.
There are preconceptions there of being like, oh well, they're disabled. Well, yeah, that doesn't mean they're not able to make their own fucking decisions, you know?
Yeah. And along the BDSM lines, I think there was always or most of the time there was always a kind of a prejudgmental belief that I was a fragile person.
Okay.
Because I'm a wheelchair user, because,
yeah,
God forbid we hurt him or break him, I have gone through more surgery than most people will see in 2 lifetimes. So I have a very high pain tolerance. And I actually learned to kind of focus on different types of pain, if you will.
Yeah.
Like I can tell the difference in my own body between muscular pain, bone pain, nerve pain, and what have you. But it's also lent itself to me finding the pleasure in certain types of pain.
Yeah, and there are
So,
many studies on it in regards
yeah.
to the endorphin rush, the way that the adrenaline kicks in. Like there's so much people. I mean, a classic version that a lot of people that might not be into like the BDSM, the fetish communities, will be possibly more aware of is like tattoos. People get tattoos and
Yes.
then they get super addicted to getting tattoos, and the reason why is because you're sat there and you're receiving pain and the adrenaline's flooding your body, but you don't have it, like you're not doing anything, you're not, there's no flight response, do you know what I mean? So you just feel that rush of adrenaline and you're like, yeah, okay, I mean it hurt like a motherfucker,
I'm gonna go
like
do this again.
but
Yeah.
let's go, when can I get my next one? Let's do it, you know. But yeah, it's
And
really
now I want
interesting.
more ink.
And so you had situations like that where people were just like, oh
Oh,
well,
sure.
gotta take
I
it
don't want to.
easy
I don't want to
on.
hit you too hard. I don't want to flog you too hard. Really, really. Plus, I'm not a small man. You
Yeah,
know, if I didn't have nerve damage, I'd be over 6 feet tall. And I'm I'm a big guy.
yeah,
Those who know me in the meatbag world have seen me. I can take care of myself. I know my own limits.
yeah.
I like to push them sometimes, but
Naturally,
don't we all?
naturally. No, of course, of course. Um, okay. One of the things that I did want to broach the topic of, is a situation that I had in my university days, all those many, many moons ago. Where have you found in your experience where people have used their disability as a kind of get out of jail free card? And the reason why I ask to put
Not
into
really.
not really that, which is great, The reason why I ask is because there was definitely a guy in university when I was in uni. There was a guy in a motorized wheelchair. Seemed like an all right dude from what I spoke to him initially, but after a few drinks, he would definitely like wheel his way round the students' union and pinch girls' bums, and they'd turn around and they'd be like, "What are you doing? Oh, it's okay, it's all right. Oh, and like completely using that perception of disabled people being vulnerable to get away with other bits and pieces. And I mean, it's one of those things
See,
that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but I'm like, let's talk about everything, do you know?
I have no tolerance for people who do that. It's
Love it.
regardless of who you are, it's a dick move.
Yeah, agreed.
Don't do it.
But it
Don't be a predatorial shit.
and it was really interesting because I don't care. Like if you're a dick, you're a dick. It doesn't make a difference who you are. It doesn't make a difference what is going on. If you're a dick, you're a dick. So I called this guy out on it because my girlfriend at the time, he grabbed her bum. She was like, "What you do? Oh, okay." And I was like, "Oi, no, don't fucking do that. That's not okay. What is wrong with you?" And I got grief because a load of the people that were around were like, "Why are you picking on this disabled guy?" And I'm like, "Because he's being a dick. I'm not picking on him because he's disabled. I'm picking on him because he's being a dick."
Right.
Like there's no
It's
middle
not
ground
about
here.
it's not about who he is as a disabled person.
Yeah,
It's about
exactly.
his actions.
Yeah, exactly, 110%. Ah, I love it. like looking back, like because for a really long period of time, I look back on that and I was like, was I in the wrong here? Was I the person that was I just being mean to a disabled person? I'm like, do you know what? No, I wasn't. I was treating
No.
that person in exactly the same way I treat anybody else who went around grabbing people's asses. Like, it's not okay. That's not okay behavior. You don't get out of jail free because you've got a disability. Do you know? It's
Right.
it's
It's
an
playing the
interesting one.
sympathy card to a degree it doesn't need to go to.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And the other thing is, it then paints people with disabilities in a bad light. Because
does.
people go,
It really
oh, well,
does.
they're abusing the system. They're abusing the things. And it's just like, no, one person is. Like, don't paint everybody with the same brush, God damn it. People are people. They're allowed to make their own actions. Judge them for their individual actions, not on everything else, you know? That was my little rant. That was my little rant going on. That was like 20 years old, and I was like, God damn it, we're going to talk about this. Oh,
No,
Jesus.
but I mean, I haven't come across that, at least in my circles, but I do know it does happen.
Yeah. And
And yeah, it's a low blow.
it is a low
really
blow.
is addictive.
It is a low blow. And it's, like I said, I like, one of the big things about this podcast that I want to do is talk about the things that a lot of people will be apprehensive about talking about, which is the reason why before we had the podcast, I was like, is there anything you don't want to talk about? Is there anything specifically? I don't want to be going out triggering stuff. Do you know what I mean? But at the same time, I want to still ask the questions that I'm interested about, that I think other people might be interested about, that people don't ask about stuff, because, like, how else are we meant to learn if nobody asks? You know?
Indeed.
You know? So in regards to, like, you talked about your ex-wife and stuff, did, like, either your ex-wife or any of your partners, have you ever been in situations where they have got grief because of being with a disabled person?
I don't know if you'd call it grief, but it's usually oh, that's so nice. I'm so glad he's found somebody like you.
What? Wait, what?
What? And usually, I mean, like, my ex-wife, for instance, was a very snarky individual.
Yeah.
So she would usually shoot back with something off the wall. But other partners of mine have not been so kind of extroverted, if you will, enough to respond quickly like that.
Okay.
So that I always get does this always happen? Yes.
Yeah. Every time. Every time.
And, I've dated non-disabled people and disabled people. And I think it actually happens more as an interabled couple, dating a person without a disability. You see that either the person with a disability gets infantilized, or the person who without a disability gets, elevated to some sort of hero status for actually being with a person with a disability.
Like it's some kind of, like, pity fuck. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
is it so hard to believe that they could just be attracted to each other? What is wrong with you people? Like, wow. Because this is something that, like I said, I can imagine happens quite a lot. Because, like you say, it's the infantilized version
It happens all the time.
a disabled person can't look after themselves. They need someone to do it. And look at this person. Oh, they've gone really out there for this other human being. Oh, bless them. They're such a saint. And it's like, no, mate, they just like each other. They're just like, it's okay. Like, that's all right. So you say you've been with other disabled people. Do you find that there was certain things that that were easier to understand with being with other disabled people, or easier to connect with, should we say?
Oh, absolutely. Like, my most recent ex has cerebral palsy. And I find it was much, much easier to broach and talk about the more sensitive subjects, like about my health or her health, or, our own different functionality levels.
Yeah, because I suppose
Much easier.
you got the same sort of level playing field in regards to you've both grown up with disabilities, and it's easier to empathize with somebody that's had similar sort of
Sure.
experiences,
Yeah.
Oh man.
Absolutely. And there's always going to be a level of, well, should I say this? Should I talk about it this way? But it's much easier in my experience if I'm dating someone with a disability, that I can talk about them, or talk to them about things like that.
Okay, is there any, or like on that note, is there any advice you would give to either disabled people or people getting with disabled people in regards to, like, the dating scene, and being
Yes.
together? Please.
Yes, absolutely. Two main things.
Okay.
One, be open-minded, because you're probably going to learn something you never knew before. And, some of this stuff might be shocking. Some of it might be a little, awkward, but it's worth getting through. Second, be fucking honest. It's not hard. I know people who, if they're in an interabled relationship and something doesn't satisfy them, they don't say anything because, oh, I'm not going to hurt his feelings. I'm not going to hurt her feelings. Really, talk. Be honest.
That happens in every dynamic that I have ever seen. It's just mind-blowing the amount of people I would say, oh, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. You're going to hurt them more by not saying something. Because eventually it'll come out, and at that point, it'll be, why didn't you tell me before? And like, a classic example, a friend of mine was in a marriage, like, for 30 years? Actually, about 30 years. And she faked her orgasm all the time. She'd never had an orgasm with her partner because when they got together, she faked it, and then it got past the point of no return of being like, oh shit, how do I explain to him that I don't orgasm all the fucking time because we've been together 30 years and I've never orgasmed before? It's like an ongoing lie of just constantly having to back that up, and you're like if this
snowballing lie.
Yeah, it's just like what, and the thing is, they eventually broke them up because she was never satisfied in bed because he thought he was always doing, and the credit that I'm not saying that the fault is on both parts. Like, she shouldn't have lied about constantly having orgasms because that meant that he was like, well, I don't need to keep looking for various different things to make her happy because I know that these things work. And it's just like, oh, come on now. Like, first of all, experiment always, forever and always.
Oh, yes.
Because you try everything twice because the first time it might hurt. That is like my ongoing motto. But also, like, if you're, like you say, if you're not honest, then everything just keeps going wrong. like it just won't get any better if you don't be truthful.
That's true. And then to your point, if with an interabled couple, experimentation is always going to be important because, like I mentioned earlier, there are certain positions that I just can't do because my body just doesn't move that way.
Yeah.
So you got to find workarounds to hit those spots or keep that momentum going that will work for each person's individual physical situation.
Mm-hmm. And you know what? I want to add to that, taking it from a point that you said earlier, is also realize that things will fuck up, and like a disabled person isn't any like, because I can imagine, and again, this is just my imagination, is the idea of you get with somebody and something goes wrong, as things do in the coital engagement scenario. Somebody gets cramp or you hit something at a wrong angle and something hurts, and then just that whole, oh my god, are you okay? Are you all right? And it's just like, yeah, I've got a cramp, or just the idea, just like that concept. Oh my god, you're disabled. I now need to look after you. Obviously, in a longer term relationship, probably not an issue because you know each other really, really well. But if you're with somebody that's like never been with a disabled person before, I feel like that is gonna be a thing in their brain. They're because in our brains, society has taught us over and over again that, oh, well, these disabled people, they need extra care. Well, no, they don't. They need what they need. They need the same shit to be able to give them the same stuff that we do. You know what I mean? We need to get up to that floor. Well, we have some stairs. They need a ramp. Like society has said that we're going to use stairs because we've got legs. Well, why can't we just change that for a ramp so that the people that have issues with their legs can do the same thing? And
it shouldn't be a hard concept. It really shouldn't.
It really shouldn't. And it's definitely something, and I've said that, I was saying this to you earlier, something that I've become more and more aware of, especially being a content creator, because I run fetish nights, I run things, is stuff that I have never even considered because I am not a disabled person. And as a result, it doesn't even enter my brain that I might need to ramp up these set of steps. And now, thanks to having such a diverse community, having people like yourself who are just like, here, I'm here to educate. Let's talk about these things. Let's talk about this, that, and the other. And I'm like, fucking, let's go, because I didn't even think about this stuff before. I love this. Let's please keep giving me the information. And it's great because now we're working with a charity, like a local disability charity that do like events and stuff, to work with them to make sure that what we have is more available for everybody. And I just like, the more I learn, it's weird, and it seems like something that should be really evident, but the more I learn, the more amazing my life becomes, because everyone gets more involved and the more accessible things are, and it's just it's mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing.
And that's the way I feel everybody should think. But then again, it takes, a little bit of effort sometimes strikes people as, oh, that's too much.
But also, I think some of it also comes down to the idea of just swallowing your pride, realizing that it's okay to be wrong, and being like, do you know what? I was wrong, and that's okay. It's all right to be wrong, because by being wrong, I am now being taught the right way of doing things, or the correct answers, and now I am a better person for it. And so people are like, no, I can't accept this. I can't be wrong. Heaven forfend. Good Lord. You're going to break down my societal bonds? Good. What is wrong with you,
Indeed.
I'm very conscious of time, so I'm going to crack on to some of the questions we've had from the chat. So for those people that don't know, we record these live on Twitch, and the wonderful chat have been using their channel points in order to ask questions. Do you know of any resources out there for others with physical, visible or non-visible disabilities when it comes to sex, and the information surrounding that?
So, unfortunately, the resources that I've found have all been through either my own research or through doctors and therapists. But for those of us with disabilities, those of us disabled folks, talk to your doctors. Seriously, your doctors can be a wealth of information. There may be questions that you would never thought to ask, like your family doctor, your general practitioner. Ask. Always ask questions. Your local health departments can be a great resource as well. May take a little bit more prodding, but the information's there. But as for specific resources right now, nothing off the top of my head.
What I can say is I've, like, especially in the preparation for this episode, I have been reaching out and looking to a whole load of different content creators. There's a lot of people on Twitter and Instagram who are people with disabilities who are pushing the sex education side of things, and the acceptance of the fact that disabled people are still people. They don't look at them in any different way. It's exactly the same scenario. So there are a bunch of that. I can put I'll make a list of them and put them in the Discord for those people that are a member of the community. And if I can, I will add it to the notes of the podcast itself, so that people can access it if they're listening to this a future date. Do you find that there are some kinks that you can't explore even though you want to, or do you manage to find some way to cover a lot of your interests?
Out of the ones that I've found that appeal to me, I'm usually able to find either direct routes or workarounds to explore them. Particularly in the BDSM communities. There have to be some sort of accommodations made for things like sex swings. It's not always easy for a person with a disability to get into one, especially if they have a mobility disability.
Yeah.
And certain restraints are more difficult because some of us, don't have the same shape of limbs as other people do.
Yeah.
But that there are always workarounds. It's just a matter of trial and error.
And also imagination, I would say. Like, don't be afraid to be like, okay, let's see where this goes, and we can work on that and build it up from a scratch. Or I definitely, when I was a young teenager and finding out more about myself that my imagination went all over the place. All kinds of diabolical machinations came up in my brain, you know? Have you found any sex and or BDSM situations / positions / experiences that have helped with your disability, e.g. pain relief?
You know, that's a very good question. And the only way I could probably answer that is, having pleasurable pain inflicted on me allows me to focus on that rather than say the fact that my knees are killing me or my back is killing me. As far as positions, no, not really.
So it's like lots of diversion of
It's
pain.
a lot of diversion, yeah.
Yeah.
But diversion to more of a controlled pain situation.
Yeah.
So because we can specifically control the amounts of pain that we endure or inflict.
Yeah. And I get that.
It's more expected.
Yeah, I get that on so many levels. I know it's not the same for everyone, but if one were to be intimate with someone with a physical disability for the first time, do you have any do's and don'ts? For example, for trans people, make sure to ask for preferred terminology and such.
So do's and don'ts, definitely communication is a big one. I would say, is there anywhere that I can't touch you or that hurts if you are moved a certain way? What are your levels of sensation like, especially if the person has, like a neurological issue? How about joint flexibility? Are there positions that you prefer over others? It's important to open up those lines of communication and be specific.
Yeah. I'm going to push on that one as well. Health and safety first. Health and safety first. I mean, it's something we talk about in BDSM a hell of a lot and fetish and what have you. Like if you're doing shibari, which is Japanese rope bondage for those people that are not aware, always have safety scissors around. So that if you need to, in a situation, you can cut them out of the rope and get everything sorted and fine and dandy. But what I think that a lot of people may do is worry about the appearance of certain things, but at the end of the day, health and safety first. Like, make sure that everyone's safe, make sure that everyone's okay, and if something does go wrong, like, deal with it in the best possible way, and if that requires medical treatment, that requires medical treatment. Do not be abashed by going and doing stuff, It's good to experiment, but make sure you're all safe,
Yes.
Last one. Any advice for how teachers can support their teens and young adult students? Specifically, I mean, they haven't said it, but like specifically around sex education, but also on a wider approach as well.
Well, teachers specifically, I would encourage all teachers to talk amongst themselves and with their fellow teachers in their areas, their school districts, local governments about pushing for more inclusive sex ed.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, we seem to have like stalled out from sex ed in the 70s, which is ridiculous. It really needs to be. It needs to move forward and be far more inclusive than it is. Because like we talked about earlier, when I was in high school, there was nothing for people with disabilities. No. But those resources are out there. As far as teachers go, definitely push for your local school boards to get those resources added.
Yeah, I love that. Cool. Well, that was the last question that I was going to answer. Somebody else has asked a question, but I'll deal with that in a second because it's actually quite an interesting one that I want to explore. Which is, they said, what would you recommend for people with learning difficulties, specifically Asperger's or autism within that spectrum, looking to learn about how to learn and start a relationship. What I will say about that one is I definitely want to do an entire podcast episode on people on the autistic spectrum, people with ADHD. I want to explore neurodiversity within the podcast as well. So we will be doing dedicated like streams on them. We'll be doing dedicated episodes. Is there anything, however, from your experience that you would like to throw out there?
So I unfortunately have had limited exposure to folks with autism, folks on the autism spectrum. My ex's son is autistic, and my neighbor is on the spectrum as well. But as for building relationships like that, it would be disingenuous for me to give any kind of advice that I'm not familiar with.
Yeah. I think other than the advice that we've already given, which is honesty and communication, be open-minded, speak to each other, don't and be honest with each other. But like I said, we will be doing an entire episode on that, because it's something that I, especially with having such an amazing neurodivergent community that we have, I would be really keen to explore that more. So we will be doing a full episode on that as well. But thank you so much, you beautiful individual. Ladies and gentlemen, and all gents outside in between. OneTrueCripple. OneTrueCripple, where can they find you?
So I'm on Twitter, TikTok, all is the OneTrueCripple. Those of you who know me in the meatbag world, I have a public-facing, friends-only Facebook. You can find my writings at popcultureuncovered.com. If you have questions about anything, hit me up on Twitter.
Amazing. Thank you very much for putting yourself out there as well. And as always, beautiful individuals, I've been Valen Vain, Vain by name, Vain by nature. You can find me on all of the social media sites at Valen Vain, pretty much. And this has been Thirsty Work, the home of hedonism. Thank you so much for being a part of this and also going with me on all of the random tangents that we happen to swan down with this episode. But yeah, thank you very much for coming and listening to Thirsty Work, you beautiful human beings.